Having a bowel movement is the purest form of detoxification, so you need to do everything you can to optimize that. I'm Dr. Robynne Chutkan, gastroenterologist, microbiome expert, and author, and I am here to help you find gut bliss. On today's show, we're talking about how to poo properly so that you have a fantastic, smooth move first thing in the morning, what I like to call stool nirvana. Before I get into things like position and propulsion and cleanup, I want to spend a minute talking about preparation. Fiber, water, and exercise are the trio of things that you need for stool nirvana. You need to make sure you're getting enough of all three. And I've covered those plenty of times on the podcast. But in case you miss them or you need a refresh, check out episode 2, Shy Bowel, episode 7, Ironman Bowel Movements, episode 13, Mama Jamma Poos, and episode 39, Stool Nirvana, for some really useful background information. Okay, so you have filled your plate with fiber, you are drinking at least half your body weight in ounces of water, and you're getting 30 to 60 minutes of regular exercise every day. You are poised for some really good bathroom action. When we come back, what else you need to do to have that smooth move first thing in the morning? The Gut Bliss podcast is brought to you by VisBiome, my first and quite frankly, my only choice for a probiotic. Whether you're dealing with irritable bowel syndrome or just looking to restore your gut health, VisBiome can help. It's a medical food for the dietary management of IBS and gut inflammation, backed by science and clinically vetted by thousands of my own patients. Find your gut bliss with VisBiome. Go to visbiome.com/gutbliss and use discount code GUTBLISS at checkout. We are back talking about how to poo properly. And my number one tip is drink a big glass of water first thing in the morning. I'm going to take a little hydration break myself. I recommend having at least 40 ounces of water first thing in the morning. And really what I recommend is putting it next to you on your bedside table or on the floor next to the bed. And the first thing I want you to do when you open your eyes is to sit up or stand up and drink those 40 ounces of water. You don't have to chug them all at once. You can take a few minutes to get it all down, but you want to have a large volume of water in your stomach. Why? Because that is going to trigger something called your gastrocolic reflex. The gastrocolic reflex is a physiological reflex that controls the motility of your lower GI tract. When your stomach is stretched from a large meal or a high volume of water, it triggers that reflex, and that increases motility in your colon. It pushes the products of digestion down in your colon to make room for more food or drink that's coming in. In the morning, those products of digestion have formed into actual stool, and they are sitting right at the bottom of your colon waiting to exit. So when you drink that large volume of water, and again, you don't need to chug it, but you want to get it down within a minute or two, when you drink that, you stretch your stomach, and it triggers your gastrocolic reflex. And that means that that nice pile of stool you have sitting at the bottom of your colon is going to be more likely to exit because your colon is going to be stimulated and it's going to start contracting. That's what the gastrocolic reflex is. It's an increase in movement in the lower colon, which is exactly what you want. You want movement. Tip number 2, when you get that urge to go, you must heed the call. You must literally drop it while it's hot. Once you get that urge, that sensation that, I think my poo is trying to come out. If you ignore it and decide you're going to check your phone, or you're going to make some coffee, or you're going to read the paper, you risk something called reverse peristalsis, where the poo now starts to move back up your colon in the opposite direction. If you want to hear more about that and about prairie dogging, check out episode 2, Shy Bowel. Heading straight to the toilet when you first feel that sensation that you might need to have a bowel movement is critical if you are trying to have a smooth move first thing in the morning. When we come back, position, propulsion, and cleanup. In order to have a smooth move, there are two factors you need to know about when it comes to position. The first is that you want to increase intra-abdominal pressure. That's a pressure in your abdomen, because that's going to help push the stool out. And the second is that there's a set of muscles that make up something called your anal sling. And the angle of that anal sling needs to change in order to release the bowel movement into the toilet. Definitely go back and check out episode 2, Shy Bowel, if you want to learn more about the mechanics of which sphincter has to contract and which one has to relax. But for now, what I want you to know is that bringing your knees up accomplishes both of those goals. It increases your intra-abdominal pressure, which is going to help the stool exit, and it adjusts the angle of the anal sling, and that is also going to help to release the stool. And there are a couple ways you can do this. You may have heard about a little step stool called the squatty potty. I think it was featured on one of my favorite shows, Shark Tank. But even if you don't have an actual squatty potty, any small stool will work, pun intended there. You can take a small rubbish bin and turn it upside down and put your feet on that. You could use a stack of old phone books or encyclopedias if you have any of those lying around the house. Or you can do my favorite move, which is to pull your feet up onto the toilet seat. So you sort of shift back on the seat and you put your feet up in front of you. But important warning here. If you are not flexible and you don't have good balance, do not do this, because you could literally fall off the toilet. I was in Iceland recently and I was using a public bathroom, and there was a sign with a diagram that said how to use a Western toilet. And the diagram was instructing people to sit on the toilet rather than to squat on it with their feet on the toilet seat. And I was thinking that in parts of the world, like parts of Africa and Asia and some parts of Europe, like Turkey, where people have very successful bowel movements, they squat to use a bathroom a lot of the time, and they have a lot fewer GI problems. So Western toilet etiquette, where you're sitting versus squatting, leads to Western bowel habits with more constipation. But I can appreciate this was a highly trafficked rest stop in Iceland with a lot of people in and out of the bathroom, and it made sense they did not want people putting their feet up on the toilet seat. But I, again, want to point out that having your feet up like that and squatting is actually a more natural position for having a smooth move bowel movement. Okay. You had your 40 ounces of water first thing in the morning. You got that urge to go. You went immediately to the bathroom. You sat on the toilet. You bent your legs and put your feet up on a stool. You are ready for some action. Now it's time for some gentle pushing. Notice I did not say straining. I said pushing. You want to try and push the stool out with firm but gentle pressure, what's called a Valsalva maneuver, or sometimes we say you're bearing down. So you want to do that and then relax for a minute. And you can do a few cycles of that. You may need to bear down 2 or 3 times, but you want to avoid prolonged energetic straining, because that can lead to hemorrhoids and something called rectal prolapse, where a part of your rectum is literally hanging out the end. For more on that, check out episode 36 on hemorrhoids. Super important point here as we are talking about propulsion. You do not want to take your phone or a book or a magazine into the bathroom with you, because that is going to take your attention away from propelling the stool out, and you are not going to be focused on pushing and making sure that the stool exits. You're going to be focused on checking your email or catching up on news or reading your book. So not a good time to multitask. Having a bowel movement, especially if you're trying to have a smooth move, is important business and it needs your full attention. The other point I want to make here is that if you are pushing and you think the bowel movement is finished and you stop pushing, that can end up pinching off the stool before it's completely out. And so instead of one nice log, you end up with small pellets, kind of like sausages on a string. So you want to maintain that push long enough for the stool to completely exit. The final thing I want to talk about is the cleanup. We want to successfully remove all the stool from around our anus after a bowel movement. When we finish having a bowel movement, we don't like the idea that there may still be some stool hanging around and, it can end up staining your underwear. But we also need to keep in mind that the skin around the rectum is very delicate. And if you are wiping a lot with dry toilet paper, it's likely to irritate that area. And wetting the toilet paper is going to lead to soggy toilet paper, and that is also going to make it difficult to clean up. So what I recommend is a little bit of petroleum jelly. Keep a tube of it in the bathroom and just squirt some out onto the toilet paper for that final wipe. And that petroleum jelly is going to help remove any final traces of stool. And it's also going to provide some protection. It's going to coat the skin in that area and prevent it from getting super dried out and irritated. I don't recommend using any kind of wet wipes, and particularly nothing scented. Those products tend to have a lot of chemicals in them, and they can irritate your rectal area. So just a little bit of petroleum jelly on the toilet paper is what I recommend if you find that you are wiping a lot. Now, if you're fortunate enough to have a bidet, that's fantastic. When we were building our house about 10 years ago, my one non-negotiable was a bidet in the master bathroom. My husband thought it was unnecessary, but I was very insistent. And I'm telling you, and I know this is TMI, but I'm going to tell you anyway, I use that bidet every morning after my bowel movement. I get on it backwards because I'm washing my rear end, not the front. But I highly recommend a little warm water irrigation of the anal area before the final wipe, or after the final wipe works well too. For my patients who have diarrheal illnesses like ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, where they're often having bowel movements multiple times a day and the stool may be loose, a bidet or a bidet attachment is essential for helping to keep that area clean without irritating it from frequent wiping. If you don't have a bidet, not to worry, you do not need to build a new house. There are lots of devices that you can add to your toilet that can turn a regular toilet into a bidet, and many of these are under $100. I've included a link to the top 5 bidet attachments in the transcript for this episode, and you can find that on the website at gutbliss.com under podcast. I want to leave you with 3 takeaways about having a smooth move. Number 1, pay attention to your position on the toilet. Having your knees up to approximate a squatting position is going to help tremendously. Number 2, heed that call when you feel the urge to go and push, but don't strain. And number 3, be gentle with a cleanup. A little petroleum jelly on the toilet paper or some irrigation with a bidet or bidet attachment after wiping will go a long way. So that's it for this week's episode of the Gut Bliss podcast on smooth moves, how to poo properly. If you have a burning question that has anything at all to do with your digestive tract, I would love to hear from you. You can email me through the contact form at gutbliss.com or DM me on Instagram at gutbliss. Go to gutbliss.com for my free 7-day microbiome reboot course. If you like what you're hearing, drop a review and hit that subscribe button. And remember, dirt, sweat, vegetables, the best prescription for a healthy gut.
The information presented in this show is not meant to be medical advice. Consult your doctor before making any decisions about your health. The patients discussed are real people, but names and identifying features have been changed to protect their privacy.